everybody. This is the Prometheus Radio Project, and today we are presenting the webinar on how to fill out the technical part of the Low Power FM application. And we're going to be, I think the webinar will last like an hour, and we're going to do the presentation, and we're going to be recording the questions and the chat. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to enter your questions in the chat, and we are going to be recording these questions, and at the end of the presentation we will be answering questions. So my name is Ana Martina. I'm the Technical and Trainer Director, and I'm here with Will Floyd. You want to say hi?
Hello, everyone.
Will Floyd is the Technical and Trainer Organizer, and with Paul Bame.
Hello, everyone.
Paul is also Technical and Trainer Organizer. We're all organizers here, and we are going to be helping people with the technical application. So we're going to be helping you today to answer some questions. And so if you are watching this presentation, and you can call with your phone as well, and you can use the number 213-416-1560, and you have to use access code 954162871. And if you are watching this presentation on your screen, you can see the numbers at the bottom of the slide. And we're going to be recording this presentation for those ones who can't attend today online. And the presentation is going to be archived in our website, prometheus.org/webinars. So we're going to start. Again, today we're going to be talking about how to fill out the technical part of the LPFM application. And I'm going to pass this to Will.
All right. So, again, we're going to be focusing on the technical section of the application, also called the tech box. And for those of you who have questions about the other parts of the application, which are kind of the legal parts, about your group and proof that you're eligible for a license, we're going to have additional webinars scheduled for September and later that will give an overview of that section as well. So to get into the tech box, this section of the application is primarily related to the proposed location of your transmitter and your antenna for your LPFM. Now, finding a good transmission site is one of the most important things to having a really good, successful low-power FM station. And we're also going to be holding a webinar on that subject on August 21st at 6 p.m. But I'm going to go over a little bit of how to look for a transmitter site. You see the agenda up now, so that's what we're going to be going through. And so the first thing up is the transmission site. So the transmission site is the place where your tower is, the building where your antenna is on top of, and where your broadcast equipment is. This may or may not be the same place as your broadcast studio. But what's important about the transmitter site is that it is in a location where it can reach all of the people, the community that you are intending to reach with your low-power FM station. So the first step in finding a transmission site is figuring out who you want to reach. So knowing which neighborhoods people are living in, who you are organizing with to start your community radio station. That is the area that you probably want to reach with your transmission. So that is the first step in figuring out where to put your transmitter. Here we go. This is just a little bit about the coverage. So as you can see in this graphic, depending on where you're located, what's around you, the ground, the terrain around you, and the buildings around you, a low power FM signal or any FM signal is going to go different distances. Farther in rural areas, not so far in big cities. And in addition, interference from other radio stations will affect this, which is usually increased in urban areas and big cities. This is one of the things you want to think about when you're putting your transmitter somewhere. Also, it's good to know that transmission relies on a line of sight between the transmitter and a radio receiver, the type that's in your car or at your home. So as you can see, having a transmitter tower in a valley, you're going to have some trouble reaching the top of that valley. Whereas if you put your antenna in a high place, it'll be much easier for folks in the valley and outside of the valley to receive your signal. Those are some of just the quick things about finding a transmission site. There's a whole lot more on the technical side of it, and we encourage you to visit our transmission toolkit, which is on our website, prometheusradio.org, at the subpage transmission, and there's a link on your screen, and that'll tell you more about how to find a transmission site. But we're not going to go into too much depth there because what's really going to be covered in this session is how to fill out the application with the information, assuming you already have a transmission site.
All right, so now we need to remember also the reasonable assurance.
Reasonable assurance is the document or the letter that you're going to get with someone who's the owner of a property that you are using for your transmission site. So if you are putting a transmission site on your area that you already own, your organization owns, you don't need to secure this agreement. But if you're renting from someone, or if you're trying to find a site and you're approaching an owner of a property, it's very, very important that you have a document, an agreement, to put your transmission site there before you apply for that site, because it's very possible that if you don't have that agreement in writing, that once you submit the application, you might have someone back out on you, or there's all different kinds of things that could happen. So this is kind of the most very important thing that you would need if you're using someone else's site.
All right, so now we're going to be talking a little bit about the parts that you need for the application. And what Will was telling you a little bit is some sort of like the background information that you need to know in order to be able to fill out this application. So we are going to be talking about the different parts in the application in the text box. We're not going to be talking about the legal parts. We're not going to be talking about the information about the board, because that was already being covered in our past webinar. And I can send you after this webinar the link where you can watch that presentation. But right now we're going to be focusing in the text box. And where you're going to be finding in the text box is channel, antenna coordinates, antenna structure, registration, site elevation, tower height, antenna height, power and height limitations, and a series of exhibits in case of you are having some, that you are going to be causing some kind of interference. And we're going to be talking about any of these different subjects. So we create a link where you can be accessing to the form 318 and the CDBS. And we just create this link because it's sort of like easier for people to access. So you can go to prometheusradio.org/CDBS, and that's going to be taking you to the page where you can create an account with CDBS. So let's go see how this is going to look like. So first, you're going to have to create an account at CDBS. So after you click in prometheusradio.org/CDBS, you're going to be redirected to the CDBS site. And then you're going to have to enter your information. And they're asking you for the name of the contact, the organization name, your address, city, email, zip code, your phone number, and then you're going to create your account. It's going to ask you for a password. And once when you have that, then the system is going to be sending you the information. They're going to send you a number, which you can see on this other screen. So this is your account number, and this is the number that the FCC, the CDBS is going to assign you. And you need to keep that number somewhere, because that's the number that's going to be being used for your application. So it's very, very important that once you create this account, you keep that number somewhere, and you can remember your account number and your password. Without that information, you are not going to be able to access your account. And once when you're entering the CDBS, you're going to notice it looks like an old database, and sometimes it can be a little bit frustrating. But there's resources that we're putting together to make it easier for people to navigate through this system. And also they have documentation in their website where you can also find a guide on how to use the CDBS, how to create an account, and also a link and where you can find more information about the form. So here you can see how it's going to look, the screen, once when you have your account ID and your password. This screen is gonna appear in your computer, and you're just enter your account number and your password. And you can see in the bottom they have some links where if you click there, it's gonna take you to the user's guide of the CDBS. So if you're wondering, if you're a little bit lost in how to use CDBS, just click there, and that's gonna be directing you to a guide of how to use CDBS. And also we will show in a second other link in how to fill out the Form 318. So once when you enter your number and you enter CDBS, you're going to see a list of forms, and you need to select that one that you want to submit. So in this case, we are going to be selecting FCC 3 application for construction permit for a low power FM broadcast station. So you can see it right here, FCC 318. So you're going to click on that, and that is going to take you to another page where you're going to have to enter the information. And in this case, you're going to enter again.
The audio is breaking up. I wonder if you could pause for a minute.
Oh, okay. Somebody was telling me that the audio is breaking. So, does that sound better? Monitor here. We're gonna try to see. Okay, I'm sorry for that. It seems like it's better now. Okay, so I'm gonna try to be a little bit slower because probably I'm talking too fast. Okay. So this screen is going to show the information that you need to enter here is if you are applying for a new station, you're gonna need to click new station and the number 1. So it's application purpose, and you're gonna choose new station if you're applying for a new station. If you are applying for minors, then you can fill out the information that is there. It's gonna ask you for call signs and other information. But right now we're not gonna be talking about those minor changes. If you have questions about how to fill out that information for major changes, major and minor changes, you can call or you can email us to technical@prometheusradio.org. Right now, we're just going to be talking about the process and how to fill out your information for a new station in Form 318. So you can find this link also in the bottom for the form instructions. And if you click in that link, it's going to take you to a PDF the FCC put together and how to fill out the Form 318. It's some sort of a form when you're paying your taxes. There are sometimes the form that comes the guide and number 1, the information that you need, the number, and all this. So this process is pretty bureaucratic, and that's why they put together this guide, so like to help people to go through the whole form. So you have any questions, or I would recommend, even if you are attempting to fill out the form, to download that form, because it's going to be really useful. And we have resources where we're trying to put the information in a way that is easier for people, but I would recommend to download the form and to read it completely. Okay? So now let's go to the Section 6, LPFM Engineering. So once when you submit your information, you're going to be taken to this screen where you can see Section 2, the legal, Section 3, the point system, and Section 6, LPFM engineering. So we're not going to be talking again about the legal or point system. We're going to be talking about the LPFM engineering. So you're going to click there in Section 6, LPFM engineering, and that is going to take you to the text box. So this is how the text box looks like in the CDBS. And as you can see, you're going to need to have some noise here, so I'm actually trying to, okay, it seems like we're fine. Okay, it's probably just my phone. So once when you're going to be preparing your information, you want to make sure that you have all this information ready, and when you're going to be filling out technical box, your information is going to be ready. So we recommend that you go over the different aspects previously. And have all that information, you can fill out text box. So again, the text box has 7 fields that you have to enter, and then it has the 8, 9, and 10, which is it refers to the exhibits. So I'm going to go over the first couple aspects about channel and antenna location, and then Paul is going to go over the rest, and antenna structure, the tower height, and antenna height, and power and height limitations. And right now, I'm going to go over the channel.
The first field that you have to fill out in text box in the Form 318 is channel. So here's very, very important that you notice that when you're going to be entering the number of the channel, that this is not the same number of the frequency. So the FCC assigns a number to the frequency that you're going to be applying for. So let's say if your frequency is 88.1, you're not going to be entering that number there. The channel assigned by the FCC is 201. So you can check, and our free has actually a template that is similar to the format of Form 318, and our free will be able to tell you what is the channel number that has been assigned to your frequency. So also the FCC has also other tools whether you can find this information, and right now in the slide you can see also there is a formula that you can use to find out what is the channel of your frequency. So remember, it's very, very important that you enter that number and you are not entering the number of the frequency. If you enter 88.1 or the frequency, your application is going to be dismissed. So this is very important to check. And again, the FCC requires there is an available channel in your community. So you need to check this before you apply. So you cannot apply for a frequency for a channel that's been already assigned to a radio station, to an existing broadcaster. So the way that you can find out whether it's an available frequency in your community, there's different tools that you can use. And you can use R3, the channel finder tool. There's a software that Prometheus Radio Project developed. So it is really easy to find out if there is an available channel in your community. You can go first to radiospark.org and create an account in Radiospark, and when you create an account, the system is going to send you a password to your email, and when you have the password, you can go back to Radiospark and then sign in, and then you're going to find a little icon of R3 that says use R3. You can click on that and that's going to take you to R3. You can see in the slider right now the logo of R3. Or you can, when you log in Radiospark, you can just go to radiospark.org/R3 and that's going to take you to the software. In that software, you're going to be able to enter the coordinates of your location, or you have an address or zip code. And right now you can see in the slider, you will have a screen that is going to ask for location. You enter there your address or your zip code, or the city where you want to apply for a frequency, and then when you enter the information, you can click and check this location, and that the software is going to be looking for available frequencies in your community. You can use R3 to find out if there is an available frequency in your community, and you can use, again, as I was saying, an address, a zip code, or even the name of the community, the city where you want to be applying, and R3 will be able to tell you. Or you can use the FCC channel finder tool, but in order to be able to find whether it's an available frequency with this tool, you need to enter the coordinates of the location where you want to be applying for a radio station. And the coordinates need to be in the format NAT27, which is the format that the FCC uses for the application. So how you can find out what are your coordinates? You can look in Google Maps and enter your address. Sometimes there's tools in Google Maps that will give you the coordinates, or you can just do a search on the internet and you might be able to find out the coordinates. You can also use R3 to find out the coordinates. So R3 also has a template that is similar to Form 318 to the tech box. So you can also run a search and find out the information for your application. And the reason why we create this is just for applicants to be able to enter their information there and then just be able to copy and paste this information in their Form 218 they're going to be submitting to the FCC. So the R3 tech box will compute the channel number for you. So how you can find this information? When you log in R3, you're going to see a menu, and then you're going to click and review, and then you're going to find a button that says Form 318 tech box. So just click there, and then that's going to show the template that is similar to Form 318, the tech box. So you're seeing right now, you're looking at this slide, say Section 6, LPFM Engineering Tech Box, and you're going to see there how this is going to be displayed in R3. So that's going to show you the channel that you're applying for.
Okay, antenna coordinates is the number 2, the field number 2 in our tech box. And the antenna coordinates are the coordinates to the location where you're going to be placing your transmitter site. So your transmitter site in your antenna. And for this, it's really, really important that you're going to be entering your coordinates in the format NAT27. And something to say is that a lot of GPS technology uses NAT83. And also some, I believe that Google also uses NAT83. So you have to convert these coordinates to NAT27. And R3 is also going to be able to convert your coordinates. You can go to R3 to the technical box and to go to change location, latitude, longitude page, and you will be finding the coordinates in the format NAT27. It is really, really important that you make sure that the coordinates are the correct ones and that this format is in NAT27. Sometimes some people wasn't paying attention in past applications and when they were entering their coordinates, and their applications are being dismissed right away because sometimes these coordinates were located in the middle of the ocean. So it is really important that you verify that your coordinates are the ones that you need. Okay. I'm going to pass now the microphone to Paul, and he's going to be talking about the next field, which is antenna structure and registration number.
Hello, everyone. This is Paul. I'm going to talk about most of the rest of the lines on the TechBox form. As I mentioned earlier by the chat, if you want to put questions on the chat, we'll try to get to them either now or after the presentation. So I'm going to talk about the infrastructure registration number. It's also a good idea to read the FCC line-by-line instructions for this question. It actually has quite a large impact. The idea is if you have an antenna of a sufficient height in a certain location, you have to register it with the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration. If you do have to do that, or if you're using somebody else's tower that's already registered with the FAA, it has a registration number, an antenna structure registration number. When you file your LPFM application, if you are using a registered tower, the FCC will compare the coordinates of that tower with the coordinates that you put in, the longitude and latitude that Ana Martina just talked about. They will also compare the height of your tower structure and the height of your antenna in some very specific ways. So you need to be pretty careful if you're using a registered antenna. So the answer to number 3 is if you're using a registered antenna, or if you discover you have to use a registered antenna and the FCC instructions tell you how to figure that out, that has an impact on some of the other questions, most particularly the antenna height questions and the latitude and longitude questions. By the way, somebody asked if the FCC will take the coordinates to the closest full second or fraction of a second. I believe that they will take it to a fraction of a second. I think I've used tenths successfully myself, and I suspect internally they don't really round it off at all. So you can put in whatever you've got. A tenth of a second, or a hundredth of a second, is about a foot. So you don't have to go overboard with it. So site elevation. This is the height in meters of your station, your proposed location at the ground level, not the top of a building, for example. Heights must be in meters and rounded to the nearest meter. That's sometimes inconvenient because a meter is a pretty big unit of measure. And like it says here, if you're using a registered antenna, make sure that the registration record for that antenna and what you put on this form is the same. If you're using R3 will choose an elevation for once you put in your location on the map, it will use an elevation service to go look up the elevation there. I recommend that you confirm that elevation, even though I haven't seen any that are bad. I recommend that you confirm that elevation with some other sources. Tower height, question number 5. Pretty self-explanatory. The thing to remember here is if you put your antenna on the middle of a tower or middle of a telephone pole, for example, this is the height of the top of the telephone pole. If you put your antenna on top of a telephone pole, then that makes the structure higher, so you have to, in that case, measure to the top of the antenna. It's really, what's the highest thing that could hit an airplane? And that's what the FAA cares about, and then I think that's the easiest way to think about tower height. Antenna height. The FCC will call this the height of the radiation center. Usually what this means is it's the middle of your antenna. And we put some information in here. FM antennas can be different sizes. A real rough guideline is, imagine that you'll need 2 meters of height for each bay of an FM antenna. Now, many people are going to be using multi-bay antennas. They're more expensive, but they have some advantages, some considerable advantages. So that's why we say just imagine it's 2 meters per bay, and you'll be all right. A lot of people will be using 2-bay antennas, by the way. What is the radiation center? Oh, I see that the slides haven't kept up. Thank you, Ana Martina. If you have a 2-bay antenna or a 4-bay antenna, the height of the radiation center is generally the height of the center of the vertical part of your antenna. To be sure, you can contact the manufacturer. The specifications from the manufacturer should be quite detailed. Of course, at this point, you don't necessarily know what antenna you're getting, so that's why we can use these guidelines about 2 meters. If you're using RFRE, by the way, there's a little extra piece here about the antenna height has to be somewhat less than the tower height. That's a check that the FCC has done in the past. It's a bit of an artificial check, but just know it's there and you should do it. That means that your structure height, which could be to the tip of your antenna, needs to be at least 1 meter higher than your radiation center. We should put a drawing in some of our materials about that. Power and height limitations. I see a question about what is a 2-bay or a 1-bay antenna. I'll answer that really quickly. If you look at an FM antenna, simple ones like you might have hooked up to your stereo, those are usually 1-bay antennas. They can look a little bit like television antennas, and they're just, think of it roughly as it's one chunk of metal, and that's a 1-bay antenna. You can stack them on top of each other and get some good properties from that at a somewhat greater expense, and desirable transmission properties, which I'm not going to go into here. And practically speaking, a lot of people will be using 2-bay antennas. Some people will go up probably to 4, but I don't expect to see anything bigger than that. If you look at commercial transmission sites, you will often see that they will stack them sometimes as many as 13 high for a UHF TV station. So power and height limitations. This question is basically saying, do you agree to abide by the power and height limitations that the FCC gives you on your construction permit? If you check no, you're not going to get a construction permit, so it's kind of a silly question. Now we get to the really interesting ones. How do you know if you're going to interfere with other stations? That's what the FCC is all concerned with. I have wrote some very complicated rules that tell you how far away you have to be from various kinds of other radio stations, and applications for changes to those radio stations, and applications for new radio stations, and all sorts of things. So we use software called a channel finder generically. The FCC had one that Ana Martina referred to earlier. RFRE is the one we're developing in Prometheus, and my LPFM is another one that we're familiar with and think highly of. So usually what you do is you enter your coordinates into one of these pieces of software, and they'll tell you whether you meet the specifications or not. If you don't meet the specifications, then there are opportunities available in this window particularly to ask for the FCC to bend the rules a little bit. You're asking for a waiver. Now, a waiver is just that. It's a request to bend the rules a little bit. You're saying, well, I don't meet the strictest form of the rules, but I'm not going to cause any interference anyway, and here's why. And so the here's why part is highly technical. It requires what we call an exhibit. And these technical exhibits, some of them can be done by R-free and some of them cannot, but we're not talking about R-free too much here. Know that, let me go back to that one for a sec. Do we have an image of R-free in a minute? We do. Yeah. I'll just touch really quickly on environment and safety. The only reason that we have a special entry here is that the environment and safety worksheet in the FCC instructions is currently missing. The FCC knows about that, and they should be getting that up to date. I don't know when, haven't heard anything. So if you're using R-free, R-free will take the information that you enter about the station you want to create, and it will produce a text box, and it will handle such details as phone numbers, coordinates converted to the right coordinate system, and it will fill out some of the other things on the text box. And here you can see what it looks like in R-free. You can see that the coordinates are filled in, the antenna site elevation is filled in, the height of the radiation center, or the antenna height has been filled in. This is based on having entered this information into R-free clear. Now we get to the more interesting parts, which is the interference and whether you're going to need exhibits. So again, exhibits are a request to the FCC to say, well, I don't meet the strictest rules, but here is a technical argument why I'm not going to cause any interference. When do you need an exhibit? Well, if you look at this page that's up, there's a green check mark by two frequencies, 97.1 and 97.3. This is from R-free. And for what we call them green channels, you won't need any exhibits. And that's what green means, basically. Yellow means you're going to need exhibits. Yellow could also mean it's impossible. But generally, there's a lot of things that are yellow where you'll need some exhibits. And we're going to take well, we're not going to take a deep look at that. If it's yellow, you're going to need an expert of some kind, an engineer, to help you. And what that means is, here's the text box as it appears at the FCC. Question 8 says, are you going to cause any kind of interference? 8A is interference to other stations. 8B is interference to translators. I'm not going to cover this in detail. You'll see Exhibit 11 and Exhibit 12 over on the right-hand side. If you're going to bend the rules for 8A, you need to click that button and attach some technical arguments there. The same for 8B. If you're a technical person, R-free can do a lot of these exhibit writings for you, but not all. Question 9 is similar. It's, are you going to interfere with TV channel 6? I don't really think many people are going to need an exhibit here. It's pretty much a yes or no question, and that is told you by the FCC or R-free or any other channel finder. Question 10 is RF safety. We talked about that briefly. Here's what questions 9 and 10 look like in R-free. So R-free will show you whether to check yes, no, or not applicable for TV interference. It doesn't help you with the environmental stuff, but you can do that on your own. Let's see if there's a question. No questions yet. So these are all the exhibits that you could have. Exhibits demonstrating you won't interfere with other stations, that's Exhibit 11. That you won't interfere with the inputs of translators, that's Exhibit 12. You won't interfere with people listening or watching TV channel 6, that's number 9. And then environment and safety, there are cases where you'll need an exhibit there, especially if you're putting your antenna on a site that's used by someone else. And now, I'm going to pass this over to Will to begin wrapping up.
All right, so those are the exhibits, as Paul explained. Now, as Ana said in the chat, unless you're familiar with this kind of engineering work, you should contact an expert, an engineer, if you are applying for a channel in which you would need an exhibit. So we're going to talk a little bit about how to find an engineer who is qualified. There's all kinds of engineers. There's sound engineers, recording engineers, structural engineers. You know, yes, those dudes indeed do rule. And so it's important to find an engineer who's a telecommunications or broadcast engineer who has experience actually filing applications and doing studies for exhibits and writing them and for applications for FM stations like this one. Now, there are broadcast engineers who do other things, build towers and hang antennas and maintain studios and build studios. Yes, broadcast allocations engineer is who you're looking for. So there is a resource that we have been working on that puts you in touch with engineers who can help you, and that is RadioSpark, which I hope that some of you are familiar with. Now, if you go to it's radiospark.org, and it's a site that Prometheus Radio Project runs, and you can find a lot of information there, and you can ask questions at RadioSpark as well in the forums, which are really useful. And one of the things that you can find on RadioSpark is a listing of engineers. So if you go to radiospark.org and you go to the Resources tab, you will get this screen. And as you can see, and you'll get a big list of different kinds of support, and you'll see here that in this screenshot we checked engineering support. So and basically what that does is it sorts it by engineers, folks who have posted on RadioSpark saying, I'm a broadcast engineer and you can use my services. Now, that anyone can post there. So there are a lot of really highly qualified individuals who have posted there who are available to help you. But how do you know which one to pick? Well, first of all, the person that you pick does not need to be near you. Unlike for building your station, a broadcast engineer who is going to help you file the application and do exhibits for you if you need them can be anywhere. Can be anywhere in the U.S. Or in the world, really. But needs, and basically what they will do is get information from you, enough of it that they will be able to complete the exhibit. So if you click on one of the engineer listed in RadioSpark, you'll see a profile of them, and there's a bunch of different fields where you can get more information about who they are and what they do. Some of the important fields, and maybe the most important one for you to know what kind of engineer, or if they would be able to fill out the application, is the RF engineering skills, radio frequency engineering skills. So for the application, and if you need an exhibit, you're going to want an engineer who can file low-power FM applications, Form 318, which is what we've been talking about, can create engineering exhibits for contour waivers, if that's the kind of waiver you need, which you may not know, but that's okay because they can help you with that. Or create engineering exhibits for DU waivers, basically the same thing. You don't need to know what that is, but the engineer will be able to help you by collecting information from you and working on the exhibit. All right. So this is time for questions. So you can go ahead and type a question down if you'd like, and we can try to get to as many as possible in the time that we have, and we will also get to them after the webinar is over. So thanks for listening and being here. There's a question about how stringent the FCC will be about crowded areas, for example, LA, Chicago, Philadelphia, wherever. And the answer is they'll be just as stringent in big cities as they are in rural areas. The difference is that a rural area isn't as crowded, which means that there may be more frequencies available. So that's kind of just how it is, and unfortunately, the FCC is going to follow the rules that they have, and you can find out how many frequencies may be available in your location using a channel finder like we explained before. For example, R-Free, My LPFM, or the FCC Low Power FM channel finder.
So somebody was asking, yeah, this hour through this hour radio. And some people was asking about the process of a petition to deny. So what is going to happen once when you submit your application, the FCC is going to go over those applications, and they're going to, the ones that are dismissed, you will be communicated that your application was dismissed, but the ones that are accepted, the FCC is going to publish a list of those applications that are being accepted. And then we are expecting that at the end of the year, hopefully the list will be publicized. And once when they publicize that list, they're going to define also where the applicants are in singletons, which means there's just one applicant for that frequency. And they're also going to be informing of the MX group situations where competition is happening. And then after that, there's going to be a series of process where those MX groups are going to get into different situations where they're trying to go over universal settlements or partial settlements. And then after that will become the petition to deny process. But for that information, we can also offer more information in our help desk. But if people have more technical questions, we can go over those ones first. We actually have a lot of questions. So somebody is asking about the worksheets 2 and 3. I don't know if you Paul can answer that.
I think maybe one of our participants has more information than I do. He says they're possibly going to be made available soon. One of the other things is they'll probably be the same as the old worksheets, and I suspect we could dig up a copy somewhere, though using them would not be official and recommended and all that.
So there was a question about leasing space on an existing tower. We cover a bit about that in our transmission toolkit guide, but there are some tools out there that you can use to find towers in your area. One, I think, is antennasearch.com. Paul maybe could check that. And there's also a database that you can use in Google Earth that's made available by Cabell, Mertz and Associates, which is an engineering firm, and you can find that at fccinfo.com. LPFM.com, I think. But there's information about how to find towers that are existing in your area and contact them to see if you could put your antenna up there. There's various issues with doing that. Cost can be a significant issue because often if it's a company that owns several towers, there's competition for getting on those towers, and folks who have more money tend to win. So, it's always, I think, a good idea to be able to look at options. It may not be, in many cases, the greatest option, but it's possible to put multiple things on the tower that radiate. So you can have an FM antenna on a cell tower, or next to a satellite dish of some sort. Yeah. But look for the transmission toolkit for more information about that.
Somebody was asking also about if we can explain again what to do if you have a yellow in your results in R3. So again, if you have a yellow, that means that your frequency might be causing some kind of interference. And if you're in that situation, we definitely recommend to call an engineer. And you can email questions to us at technical@prometheusradio.org, and we might be able to answer some of those questions depending on our capacity. But definitely we have a lot of resources, and I'm gonna also post a link where you can find more information, some of like the background information for all these questions. We're working in a technical guide to be able to fill out this application, or to at least understand the different aspects of the application. And I'm gonna chat the link for that guide. This is the first draft, and it's just the first part of the guide, and which it has all the background information for that. And we're gonna be making public pretty soon the entire guide. I believe like in 2 weeks we might have the entire guide, and this guide is definitely going to be able to offer more resources and answer those questions, and might have with more detail all this information that we're providing right now in this webinar. Yeah, somebody's asking about the Google Earth to get latitude and longitude.
So the answer to that is, as Paul discussed, you can use Google Earth to get latitude and longitude. You can also use Google Maps, which R3 uses, and I think my LPFM also uses, if I'm correct. Yeah, have in mind, of course, that those are using a more modern standard that we discussed earlier for latitude and longitude, and you'll need to convert those to NAD 27 for the form. There's a question about what clearest signal distance means in R3. So what that means is, if you placed your transmitter at the location that at any location, so like you pick a place in R3 to put it, the clearest signal distance is the distance to the point where your signal will start to break up. So that's the distance where you will be, you will be able to get a clear signal using a standard radio receiver. And usually that is because of interference from a station that's on the same channel or on the first adjacent channel, either one. So, 98.1 has a first adjacent channel at 98.3 and 97.9. So those are the three channels that would interfere with a channel.
We run this back to the how far will it go slide.
Yeah.
So we're just gonna go over like that question about how far the signal can go.
So I ran back to the slide that shows in idealized flat terrain, which doesn't really exist, how far your signal will go, depending on whether you're rural, urban, or in a big city, and whether you're transmitting in stereo or mono. So I hope that begins to answer the question. I will say that in ideal conditions, you can go further than the furthest example here. And ideal conditions usually means rural and you have a really good line of sight, like you either can or you can almost see from the antenna to the listener. That would be line of sight.
I just posted in the chat also the link where people will be able to download the first draft of the first part of the technical guide. And again, I believe that in about 2 weeks we will have the entire guide available for everybody, and we'll have in detail how to create an account in CBDS and all this information that we're providing in this webinar. But you can go to the link and you can download the first draft, which is part A of that entire guide.
There's a highly technical question about the clearest signal distance. Does it refer to the 60 dBu contour? No, it does not. Or to the co-channel first and second adjacent interference. It does refer to interference. It's the distance from your antenna where another station's signal would begin to cause some of your listeners to experience interference. It doesn't mean that they wouldn't hear your station. It means that they would begin to hear interference. ARPRI calculates this in 2 different ways. This is pretty technical. Well, I won't go into the technical calculation. Let me say that on the frequencies available page, the one with the green and yellow and red checkboxes and the frequencies, on that page, the clearest signal distance does not take into account the interference from second adjacent stations. That's because many of us are going to have to be putting our LPFMs on top of second adjacent stations anyway, and getting those DU waivers, which if you look in there, they're the yellow channels with the PZ equals something or other. So the interference on that page does not include second adjacent. If you go to the detail page for a frequency, it lists all of the other stations and other things that could be affecting your signal, and it will give you for each one what the clearest signal distance is. And it includes on that page the second adjacent and the third adjacent, and even IF. No, I don't think I did IF. The thing is, the newer radios have good filtering, and so the second and third adjacent interference isn't as much of an issue as it used to be. And like I said, we're going to be, most of us, in areas where third and second adjacent quote-unquote interference is a reality, so we're just going to have to deal with it. That's why I didn't put it in the frequency summary page.
There was a question about regulations and standards in regards to EAS, Emergency Alert System, rules about language, and the answer to that is that low power FM stations have different rules than commercial stations or even other non-commercial stations that are full power. And you can find those rules on our website and also on the FCC website. I think they're under the legal section of our station support page. And there's a document there that'll explain the rules that low power FM stations need to follow, which are slightly less onerous than the non-commercial rules.
Somebody was asking also if, just to be clear, if your frequency is in green and are free, you don't need to attach an engineering exhibit. So again, yeah, if your frequency is marked as green frequency, it's true that you're not going to be counting any possible interference. But you might want to double check with somebody. They can just maybe review your application. But yeah, so Paul, he wrote the software. And the software is being updated with the database from the FCC. So we're keeping the software updated with the information of the FCC, so that information is still true. And if your channel is green, you don't need to attach an engineering activity. I don't know if you, Paul, want to add anything here.
I do. Ana Martina is right about this 99.9% of the time. That 0.1% of the time, what you really ought to do is go check the details for that frequency and go through that list, especially the items at the top of that list, just to make sure there's nothing in there that's either coded as yellow or red, and that you understand all those things. It is possible, though unlikely, it is possible that there would be some things on a green panel that you might want to attach a waiver just to let the FCC know that something's going on, and in case they get worried about it. I think this is going to be 0.01% of the time, but I do want to say that it is a possibility.
Okay, so we are at 7:05, and we might take another 2 or 3 questions, but let's try to start wrapping up. And again, this webinar is going to be recorded and it's going to be available on our website, prometheusradio.org/archive. And we're going to be sending by email the PDF of this presentation. And we're going to try to create also a PDF with Q&A from this webinar. So if we're missing any question that's being posted here, we're going to try to gather all those questions and try to create that Q&A. And also, if you have more questions that are not being posted in this chat in this webinar, please submit those to radiospark.org. We have a section that is for questions, and we go over those questions regularly. So if you have any other questions, feel free to post those ones in RadioSpark. So, one more question, 2 more questions. Yeah, we'll have to find them.
There's a question about nonprofit status. You don't need to be a 501c3 or have any kind of IRS designation. You need to be a nonprofit organization registered with your state in order to apply. If you're going to be a nonprofit, you can also be a public safety organization or a school or a tribe as well.
Okay, so somebody was asking if there's anywhere in the application something that you have to refer to the emergency alert system plan for this. So no, there's no, that question, it doesn't come in the application, but you are going to be required to have an emergency alert system once when you are building your station. That's part of the, I don't know if that's part of the construction permit.
It is part of the rules to have, as an LPFM, you need a emergency alert system decoder, but you actually don't need an encoder. So the emergency alert system requirements for LPFMs are not as difficult than they are for other radio stations. But yeah, you do need to have EAS or emergency alert system receiver and decoder. And basically what that does is it receives messages from the radio network, the emergency system alert system network, which is comes from the state by state and then and also federal kind of network of all radio stations that receive information from other radio stations if there's an alert in your state or your locality. But yeah, you do not need that any information about that. That is just for the application. That's just a requirement of legal broadcasting.
And there's a question about, is there anything that tells you the best place to put your antenna? And boy, that is the $64,000 question. The answer is no. If it's something that, I mean, a lot of locations will work reasonably well. That's the good news. The bad news is if you want the one that will work absolutely the best, you're going to have to hire an engineer and pay them a lot of money. But most sites I mean, if you use R3, it'll give you a prediction of the coverage area. There are some other things that will give you a prediction of the coverage area. And generally, the coverage is quite good, even though the details of each block by block are not in the prediction by R3, and you really are going to have to be an engineer if you want to figure that out.
And again, for those folks that have more questions about tower site and how to find the best, the ideal tower site, I'm gonna post again the link where you can download the guide, the transmission toolkit, and there you can find more information that might be useful for you, even just to be looking around your town and to be starting to be calling people also in your community, people that own towers that are already being registered, to start finding out what is going to be the cost if you are planning on renting a space in their tower, even if they have a space in their tower.
For people who are looking for towers, I don't know if Will mentioned this, but there is a website, fccinfo.com. It's run by a commercial consulting company, and they have a downloadable Google Earth thing that will show you all sorts of information about other stations and towers in your area. And I don't know how frequently they update it, but they generally have pretty good services there, so I would imagine it's a high-quality thing. Another question is from Bob in New Orleans, who's planning to use a tower that has the wrong coordinates. I guess if there's two registration systems. There's the tower registration system that the FAA uses, which is probably ULS, which is also shared by the FCC. There's the tower registration system, and then there's the various records. Like in this case, there's going to be a PBS station record that has coordinates, and that's more in the FCC's database. It depends on which coordinates are wrong. What you need to make sure is that the registered tower coordinates from the antenna registration system are the same as the ones, or within a half a second of the ones that you put in on your application. If they're not within a half a second of what the FAA antenna registration database says, you're going to get kicked out.
Okay, and somebody else was asking about the cost to hire an engineer. So some of them charge by hour, and the prices can go, from $45 to $250 per hour or more. And some of them are charging flat rates, $500 up to $3,000 or more. So those are like the costs that we have roughly from intake that Will's been doing, calling engineers. And you can find more information again in radiuspark.org. If you go to resources and filter the search for engineer support, you might be able to find the information about their rates. Okay, well, it is now